So this is going to be a quick little reading from several key points from this volume of Popular Astronomy. As you can see here, Popular Astronomy by Francois, is that how you say that? Francois, ergo, Perpetual Secretary of the Academy of Sciences. The Perpetual Secretary, right? Oh, Perpetual Secretary for all of eternity. Translated from the original and edited by Admiral Smith and Robert Grant. 2 volumes, London, 1858. So, this is going to be in reference to the supposed cooling effects of the moon. And we're going to page 309, the red moon. Is that also known as the harvest moon? I'm not going to take the time to look at that. So, the red moon. Chapter 32. Quote, "I am delighted to see you all around me," said Louis the 18th, one day to the members of a deputation from the Bureau des Longitudes, who had repaired to the palace to present him with the Connaissance des Temps and the Annuaire, "since you will explain to me clearly what the red moon is and how it affects the harvests." Laplace, to whom these words were chiefly addressed, remained as if pinned to the earth, who had written so much on the moon, and had indeed never thought about the red moon. If I'm not mistaken, no, I don't want to quote that. Okay, so, continuing. He consulted all his neighbors by their looks, but seeing no one inclined to speak, he resolved to answer, "Sire, the red moon does not occupy a place in astronomical theories. We are not therefore prepared to satisfy your majesty's curiosity." In the evening, whilst at play, the king joked about the embarrassment into which he had thrown the members of his Bureau des Longitudes. Laplace, having heard of this, proceeded to the observatory and asked me whether I could enlighten him respecting this red moon, which had occasioned so awkward an incident. I promised to go and collect information on the subject from the gardeners of the Jardin des Plantes and other agriculturalists. Such was the origin of the following chapter. I promised to go and collect information on the subject from the gardeners of the Jardin des Plantes and other agriculturalists. Such was the origin of the following chapter. It is far from my intention to attribute the least merit to the ideas which the subject of the red moon has suggested to my mind, but as I see some of my paragraphs repeated in recent works without any indication of the source whence or the author from whom they were drawn, to obviate all suspicion of plagiarism, I will remark that they appeared in the Annuaire du Bureau des Longitudes of 1827, so that in case of dispute I might also claim a legal right. It is generally believed, especially near Paris, that the moon, in certain months, has great influence on the phenomena of vegetation. Have not savants been too hasty in condemning this opinion as a popular prejudice undeserving of any examination? Let the reader judge, and judge I shall. Gardeners apply the epithet of red moon to the moon which, beginning in April, becomes full either about the end of that month or more commonly in the course of May. According to them, moonlight in the months of April and May exercises a baneful influence on the young buds of plants. They affirm, having observed that when the sky is clear, the leaves and buds that are exposed to the light of the moon redden. That is to say, they are frozen, although the thermometer in the open air may remain several degrees above zero. They assert further that if a cloudy sky intercepts the rays of the moon so as to prevent them from reaching the plants, these effects no longer occur, although under perfectly similar thermometrical circumstances. The phenomena thus appear to indicate that the light of the moon is endued with a frigorific virtue. And that is to say, in plain English, that it cools things down. It seems that he really doesn't want to go there, right? Yet, on directing the most powerful lenses or reflectors towards the moon, and then placing very delicate thermometers in their foci, nothing has ever been perceived which could justify so singular an assertion. Well, that's funny, because in modern day it has. In modern day, people do it all the time. Hence, in the mind of physicists, the red moon has been banished as a popular prejudice, although agriculturalists still remain persuaded of the correctness of their observations. But since they're not called physicists, surely they can't know what they're talking about. A beautiful discovery, however, made by Wells some years ago will enable me, I think, to reconcile these two opinions, an appearance so contradictory. Nobody previous to Wells had imagined that terrestrial objects, except in a case of quick evaporation, could acquire in the night a temperature different from that of the atmosphere by which they are surrounded. This important fact is now established. If we place small pieces of cotton or eiderdown in the open air, we shall often find their temperature 6, 7, or 8 centigrade degrees below the temperature of the circumambient atmosphere. Vegetables are subject to a similar influence. We must not, therefore, judge the cold that a plant has undergone in the night by the mere indications of a thermometer suspended in the air. The plant may be severely frozen, although the air may have continued several degrees above zero. These differences of temperature between solid bodies in the atmosphere amount to 6, 7, or 8 degrees of the centigrade thermometer only when the weather is perfectly serene. If the sky be cloudy, the difference disappears altogether, or becomes insensible. I need not now point out the connection between these phenomena and the opinions of agriculturalists relative to the red moon. In the nights of April and May, the temperature of the atmosphere is often not more than 4, 5, or 6 centigrade degrees above zero. When this happens, plants exposed to the moon's light, that is to say, under a serene sky, may be frozen, notwithstanding the indication of the thermometer. If the moon, on the contrary, does not shine, if the sky is cloudy, the temperature of the plants not falling below that of the atmosphere, there will be no frost, unless the thermometer went down to zero. If it is true, as the gardeners assert, that under entirely similar thermometrical circumstances a plant may be or may not be frozen, according as the moon may be visible or hidden behind the clouds, if they deceive themselves, it is only in the conclusions. It is in attributing the effect to the moon's light. The lunar light is here only the indication of a clear sky. It is in consequence of the clearness of the sky that the nocturnal congelation of plants takes place. The moon is by no means the agent. Whether she has set or is still above the horizon, the phenomena equally occurs. The observation of the gardeners was incomplete. It was wrong to call it false. Okay, and here lies the issue. This is what mainstream academicians do time and time again. What I just read is an individual that quite literally confirmed the observations of the agriculturalists while simultaneously dismissing them. Do you see how this game works? What type of fucking retard confirms the observations but then says, you know what? It's not due to the moon's rays though. It's just because the sky is clear. Right, because that makes sense. The sky is clear. Right, and that makes sense to this man instead of just admitting that the moon has a cooling effect. And time again, this is what you see, is that the so-called definitive results of science become extremely malleable when you have an individual applying them who themselves is subject to a prejudice. Said more clearly, if an individual does not want to see something, they have a remarkable capacity to not see that thing. Right? How do you confirm the observations and then completely dismiss the source of the observations and say, actually, it's just because the sky is clear? Because that's more logical, right? Which is funny because time and time again, in modern day, you see the same thing. People that maintain this prejudice that the moon does not have a cooling effect, because to them they're tackling a much larger issue and addressing that smaller one. Sure enough, they somehow manage to set up observations or to come up with explanations as to how the moon doesn't cool things down. Right? Because to them, they're maintaining their overall heliocentric stance, where the moon has to reflect the sun's light, yada, yada, yada. People that aren't subject to that prejudice do extremely simple observations, and time again, what do they come to find? Yeah, the moon has a cooling effect. Over and over and over and over and over again. It's funny how that works, isn't it?